like you see me physically struggling to come up with these teams, and I think that sort of just proves the point more. Obviously, Seattle is going to be, in contention, and that NFC West is going to be ridiculous if everyone stays healthy. But you see me sitting up here struggling to come up with teams to challenge for Tom Brady, and I'm talking myself into this. Like, I'm probably going to see Tom Brady in the Super Bowl again next year.
No, yeah, and I like I said, I 100% agree with you. The NFC West is the best division in football in terms of competitiveness, but that doesn't mean that the NFC West has the best teams. Like, pound for pound, they have the best teams, but not overall they have the best team. But yeah, the NFC, man. I mean, Tom Brady, oh man, especially with this win last night, like the GOAT conversation has come up so much today. It's honestly laughable. For anyone who has listened to me before, you know how I feel about the whole entire GOAT conversation, regardless if it's basketball, baseball, NFL, whatever it is. I'm not a huge fan of it. I believe that, GOAT conversations should be strictly for certain eras. I was actually talking to, some of my friends last night about how obviously, Tom Brady between 2000 and, up to 2020 and even a little bit past 2020, he's the best quarterback of all time for that certain era. Before Tom Brady, if you want to talk, like 1980s to 2000s, it's Joe Montana. He's the best quarterback of all time. But then my football knowledge isn't the greatest when you go back to that. Maybe some of those Pittsburgh teams, you could make an argument for some of those. But my point is, Patrick Mahomes is going to be the best quarterback going into this next era of the NFL because just compare Tom Brady's first Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes' first Super Bowl. The whole entire mindset and process of NFL teams running offenses is so much more complex nowadays. So much more detail, more schemes. Because the whole college scheme coming into the NFL is so popular now. Like, it's just so different in the NFL nowadays. So the whole notion that this seventh ring just puts the GOAT title so much more farther away from Holmes. It's just stupid to me. If you want to call Tom Brady the most accomplished quarterback of all time, whatever, fine. I give you that. But to say that from any era he is the greatest quarterback that has ever lived, and I say quarterback because he's the GOAT of quarterbacks, not the best football player of all time. It's just a little ludicrous to me. I never understand why people are so insistent of picking one player of all of the existence of football for either sport that they are the best player. I don't understand it. The same goes for basketball. Like, it's just stupid to me.
A lot of people will turn to Tom Brady and very quickly say he's the greatest of all time because of the amount of the weight of the metal that are around all of his fingers.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's difficult to compare two eras.
Yeah, exactly.
And the way that I do that, to debate, you mentioned basketball, the way that I do that to debate something like LeBron versus MJ is I will swap the two, and I will say that, this is just a little mini take. LeBron would never survive in MJ's era. You talk about the Pistons, the Celtics, those guys that he had to go through.
Yeah.
LeBron would never survive. But it's hard for me to sit up here and like switch spots with Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady because Patrick Mahomes' era is just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have no idea where he's going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years because he got drafted in
17.
2017, and he's only been in the league for a couple years, whereas Tom Brady very recently became the first quarterback in NFL history to win a Super Bowl in 3 different decades. Like, you need to consider the longevity that Tom Brady has been around and take a step back and okay, let's wait, a couple years to actually dig into dissect this GOAT debate that we're all having and not sort of jump to conclusions. Right now, it's easy for me to stand up here and say, yes, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback who has ever lived. And you can obviously argue your Elways and your Montanas and your Johnny Unitas's and your Otto Grahams and whatever. But it's hard to measure what Mahomes is going to do and what Lamar Jackson is going to do because they've only been around for such a small amount of time. Mahomes
Yeah.
drafted in 2017, Lamar the year after.
No,
It's
yeah, I know.
it's just difficult, I think.
Yeah, I just think my take on the whole thing is it's just boring. Like it's not like it's just boring to say that one player is the greatest player that ever lived. Like, and especially when it comes to the NFL, when there's so many different positions. You talked about basketball, like just kind of briefly. I think the whole putting players in different areas, like kind of switching them, is kind of an interesting theory. I for one actually think LeBron, just kind of quickly, I think LeBron actually would fare okay, just because of his kind of physical being. Like I think he could actually handle just kind of the toughness of 80s and 90s basketball. But the kind of flip side, I think if you put MJ in this era of basketball, I don't think he survives with his shooting ability with such the need to shoot threes. Like this is all hypothetical, but this is just kind of my first take. But NFL even more so. Like when everyone says that Tom Brady's the GOAT, like I always stop them and say like, so wait, do you mean the greatest football player of all time, or you mean the greatest quarterback of all time? Like not even getting into the whole era stuff. Like because if you're talking about greatest football player of all time, I honestly disagree with you. Like I know I'm talking as a Chiefs fan who just lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Either way, I don't think Tom Brady is the greatest football player of all time. I personally believe that. Yeah, I personally believe that player is Jerry Rice, but that's just my opinion. Like it's just such a Okay, that's completely fine. I'm just saying, the whole like just idea of the whole GOAT conversation just it doesn't sit right with me, and just I think it's always overblown, and it feels like every time we get to another end of a season for either the NBA or the NFL, this conversation always comes back up, and it's just like just stop. Like that's not what we need to be talking about here. How's it going, guys? And thank you so much for reaching into this video. If you're interested in more content, be sure to go subscribe, turn on push notifications, all that good stuff. Also, I'll leave links to my Instagram and Twitter up here above. And also, be sure to go follow the podcast. That is where the bulk of my content comes from. I upload to all the major podcast providers, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. I upload to it all. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.